Since the dawn of human history, people have looked up to the heavens and asked one of the most profound questions ever conceived. Where did God come from? Every civilization, every religion, and every generation has struggled with this mystery. If everything in existence has a beginning, if every effect has a cause, then who or what caused God? Did God come from somewhere, or has he always been? And if he has always been, how can that be possible? This question doesn't just challenge our understanding of theology, it pushes the limits of human reason itself. To even attempt to answer it, we must first understand what we mean when we say God. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, God is not merely a powerful being among many. He is the creator, the source of all that exists. The Bible begins with the words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." It does not explain where God came from. It simply assumes his eternal existence. To the writers of Scripture, God was not a being who began. He was the one who began everything else. According to passages such as Psalm 90, verse 2, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." This means God exists outside of time, without beginning or end. He is self-existent, dependent on nothing else for his being. In theological terms, this is called aseity, the belief that God exists of himself, uncaused and uncreated. But for many people, this idea is hard to grasp. We live in a world where everything begins and ends. Every star is born and eventually dies. Every living creature comes into existence and then perishes. Our entire experience of reality is bound by time, by cause and effect. So, when we ask, where did God come from? We are applying the rules of creation to the Creator himself. In the book of Revelation, God declares, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." That's not just poetic language. It's a declaration that all beginnings and all endings find their source in him. Time is a dimension of creation, and God exists beyond it, much as an artist exists outside the canvas he paints on. Now, skeptics and philosophers have long challenged this idea. The famous question, "Who made God?" is often used to critique the belief in a divine creator. If everything must have a cause, they argue, then God must also have one. But this argument misunderstands what believers mean by God. In classical philosophy and Christian theology alike, God is defined as a necessary being, a being whose existence is not contingent upon anything else. Everything else in the universe is contingent. It depends on something else for its existence. You exist because your parents existed. The earth exists because the universe formed. The universe exists because of certain conditions set in motion at the beginning of time. But God, by definition, is not contingent. He is necessary, the one being who simply is. This concept is deeply rooted in God's own words in Exodus 3:14, when he spoke to Moses from the burning bush and said, "I am who I am." In Hebrew, this phrase, Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, implies absolute self-existence. God doesn't say "I was" or "I will be." He simply is. He exists beyond past, present, and future, beyond the constraints of time and causality. Philosophers like Thomas Aquinas, one of the most influential thinkers in Christian history, built on this idea through what is called the cosmological argument. Aquinas reasoned that everything that exists has a cause, and those causes form a chain. But that chain cannot stretch back infinitely. There must be a first cause, something that set everything else in motion, but was itself uncaused. That first cause, Aquinas argued, is God. Other ancient cultures also wrestled with the origin of God or gods. In Mesopotamian and Greek myths, gods were often born from chaos or other deities. In Egyptian mythology, the god Adam was said to have created himself from the waters of chaos. These stories reflect humanity's attempt to understand how divine existence fits into the natural order. But the God of the Bible is completely different. He doesn't emerge from anything. He is the eternal, self-sufficient source from which everything else flows. In the book of Isaiah, God declares, "Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be after me." This verse rejects the notion of divine genealogy or cosmic evolution. There is only one eternal God, unchanging and infinite. Still, even among believers, the human mind struggles with this concept. We can't easily imagine eternal existence because our very thoughts are shaped by time, past, present, and future. But eternity isn't just a really long time. It's a different kind of existence altogether. God's eternity means he experiences all of time simultaneously. He stands outside the timeline of history and yet interacts within it. C.S. Lewis once described it beautifully. If you picture time as a line on a page, God is the page itself. That means he is both beyond and beneath every moment. He doesn't move from one second to another as we do. Every moment, past, present, and future, is equally real to him. But what about the question of origin from another angle? If God exists eternally, why does he exist? The Bible's answer is stunningly simple. Because of his nature. God is existence itself. His nature is to be. This is why theologians describe him as pure being or pure actuality. He is not a being who happens to exist. He is existence. That's why asking where he came from makes no sense, because there was never a time when he didn't exist. However, understanding this intellectually and accepting it spiritually are two different things. For many, the idea that something could exist without a beginning feels impossible. But if we reject the idea of an eternal God, we are left with an even greater mystery. How did the universe come from nothing? If matter, energy, time, and space all began at some point, then something outside of those things must have caused them to begin. Nothing cannot produce something. Out of nothing, nothing comes. Therefore, something, or someone, had to exist before all else. Even modern cosmology leans toward the idea that the universe is not eternal. It had a beginning. And if it had a beginning, it must have a cause that transcends the material universe. That cause must be timeless, spaceless, immaterial, and immensely powerful. Precisely how the Bible describes God. So when we ask, where did God really come from? The most profound answer is, he didn't come from anywhere. God has always been. He is the eternal I am. Everything else came from him, but he himself came from no one and nothing. This may leave us with a sense of wonder, or even discomfort, because it defies the logic of our finite world. But that's exactly the point. God is not bound by the same limitations as his creation. His eternal existence is what makes him God. And yet, this eternal, infinite being chose to reveal himself, not as a distant cosmic force, but as a personal, loving creator. He entered his own creation through Jesus Christ, stepping into time to redeem humanity. The same God who exists beyond all beginnings chose to begin life as a man, to live, die, and rise again. In the end, the question, where did God come from, reveals more about us than about him. It shows our human need to understand the incomprehensible, to fit eternity into our limited frame of time. But perhaps the real mystery isn't how God began. It's how he has always been, and yet still chooses to be near to us. As the prophet Isaiah wrote, "The high and lofty one who inhabits eternity says, I dwell in the high and holy place, and also with the one who is of a contrite and humble spirit. The eternal God who never began is not far away. He is closer than our very breath." So maybe the answer isn't found in tracing God's origin, but in recognizing that all origins flow from him. The question isn't, where did God come from? But rather, how did everything else come from him? Because in the end, every beginning, yours, mine, and the universe itself finds its meaning in the one who never began.